You're watching St. Michael's Journal, the journal of exorcism and all other things that go on in the night. Those who have any interest whatsoever in subjects such as the paranormal, exorcisms, ghosts, and unidentified anomalous phenomena, or what we senior citizens once referred to as UFOs, cannot resist our urge to flock to feature films that explore the phenomena we are interested in, especially those movies or TV series that excel in making us laugh. Some of us even go so far as to use scenes from these movies as analogies in our attempt to convey the nuance of a situation we might have experienced, especially when the experience from the past was a paranormal encounter. In my own experience, I often find myself attempting to use a scene from the original Ghostbusters as a means to make light of a real-life paranormal encounter, which is funny now, but it was not at all funny to the victims at the time. My team and I were called upon to perform the exorcism of a locale in a house that had previously been visited several times by a paranormal research team, aka ghost hunters. And like our intrepid spectral sleuths, we came to the realization that the resident entity had the unnatural ability to reach out and touch someone. For those of you who did not live through the 70s and 80s, reach out and touch someone was a well-known phrase popularized by AT&T's advertising campaign that encouraged people to connect with others, particularly those who might be far away, through often costly long-distance phone calls. The demonic entity, using its uncanny ability to actually make physical contact with the living, did in fact not only reach out and touch my wife, but it also made personal contact with members of the research team during one of their investigations, frightening them so badly that they ran frantically out of the house. In telling the story as it was told to me, as an analogy to illustrate the event, I used one of the opening scenes from Ghostbusters. You know, the one in which the guys are called to investigate a phantasm in the New York Public Library. When they encounter it, this spirit of a long-dead librarian terrifies them so horrifically that they go running for their very lives out the door and down the steps. I reiterate that as the story was told to me, this was exactly what happened to the paranormal investigators in question, not once, but twice. Although my wife and I thought then, and still do, that the story of the thing running those grown middle-aged men out of the house was funny, my wife did not think it was very funny when she felt an invisible clawed hand or paw of a demon, as the case may be, touch her arm several times in an attempt to cause her to drop the crucifix she was holding about shoulder height, as is common when performing the rite. Another movie scene I like to use analogously, one relative to today's presentation, is from Men in Black. When early in the movie, Agent K, Tommy Lee Jones, tells Agent J, Will Smith, "Let's check the hot sheets." And the two...
Let me check the hot sheets.
These are the hot sheets?
Best investigator reporting on the planet. Go ahead, read the New York Times if you want to. They get lucky sometimes. Thanks, Manny.
Cannot believe you're looking for tips in the supermarket tabloids.
Not looking for. Found.
This fictional scene often becomes reality. Here at St. Michael's Journal, when we find articles in what might seem to be less than stellar examples of the media that reports the latest paranormal occurrence. Our last episode, The Unholy Spirit Board, featured excerpts from two such publications, and our lead story in this issue comes from the same sort of source. The U.S. Sun recently reported of a ghostly apparition riding through the streets of Titicaca in south-central Mexico at just before 1 a.m. on an April morning. The video captured on a closed-circuit camera what seems to depict the sound of horses' hoofs on pavement, a sound that seems to indicate a horse coming at the camera. Then as the horse gallops past the camera, its rider does not appear to have a head. The article explains that the headless horseman is a classic figure in folklore across several cultures and appeared in folk stories from England and Ireland to Texas and New England. Origin stories of the horseman may vary across cultures, but they often begin with a soldier or warlord who was killed in battle and continues to haunt the living. The Green Knight of Arthurian legend is one of the better-known examples, who was beheaded by Gawain in a challenge on the condition the same blow is returned a year later. The Headless Horseman also famously appears in the classic Gothic horror story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Alleged sightings of Headless Horsemen in the real world have been reported all across the globe and continue to this day. Here at St. Michael's Journal, we reviewed the video and harbored a certain degree of skepticism when, just as before the apparition galloped past the camera, it appeared to cast a shadow from the closest streetlight. Ghosts are not very well known for their ability to cast shadows. However, readers cited by the writer of the U.S. Sun piece claimed to have more closely examined the video and were quoted in the article saying, "Zoom into the last light down the street. There's no shadow." Other would-be video sleuths who examined the clip discovered someone sitting on a ledge in the video who doesn't seem to notice the apparition or the unmistakable sound of the horse's hooves, although other residents in the area claimed to hear the sound of a horse galloping through their neighborhood. Our next story has references that will pique the interest of the fans of the Exorcist franchise, as a doll that is highly popular at the moment is said to resemble the ancient demon Pazuzu. Both the book and the film follow elderly Jesuit priest Father Marin, Max Foncito, who, while on an archaeological dig in Iraq, uncovers an ancient amulet, one depicting Pazuzu. Many of us remember the dramatic scenes depicting the moment Father Marin digs up the cursed amulet. No stranger to performing exorcism, the old priest is immediately fearful and wary of an impending confrontation with its owner, the demon Pazuzu, and as a fictional part of the Exorcist story goes, Marin's concerns prove accurate when the young girl Reagan, Linda Blair, becomes possessed by the spirit of the ancient demon. Perhaps this drama from a 52-year-old movie is a harbinger inspiring the concern many people worldwide are expressing for the insanely popular Labubu doll. At ndtv.com, we read, "Labubu dolls have taken over the world, with celebrities including Rihanna, Cher, and Kim Kardashian adorning them on handbags. The same dolls are now being linked to Pazuzu, an Mesopotamian demon, with conspiracy theories claiming that the dolls carry demonic energy. Labubu dolls are unique. They look like rabbits, have toothy grins, and have wide eyes inspired by Nordic folklore and mythology. Labubu was created by Hong Kong-born artist Casey Ling. It is made by Beijing-based toy brand Pop-Mart." Another source, the International Business Times of the United Kingdom, reports, "The frenzy began with a series of TikTok videos. Users highlighted Labubu's sharp teeth, wide grin, and piercing eyes, describing the toy as spiritually off. Some suggested the name Labubu reminded them of Pazuzu, the demonic entity featured in The Exorcist. That loose connection quickly gained traction. Soon, video creators were urging others, especially Christians, to get rid of the dolls. A few claimed they had felt uneasy or experienced strange occurrences after bringing them home. The cartoonish anthropomorphic dolls, with an evil, toothy grin, are said to resemble this demon, which seems to have first been revered by humans in about the 7th century BC, in the time of the Seleucid Empire, but was well known to the Babylonians and Assyrians throughout the first millennium BCE, almost always depicted with a canine face or muzzle. Pazuzu shared many characteristics with the Egyptian demon Bes. The use of amulets or other statuary depicting Pazuzu, said by some to be the personification of evil, apparently widespread in that ancient time according to archaeologists and historians, and now, much to the alarm of many, we are seeing the re-emergence of an uncannily similar figure. Like many entities of antiquity, Pazuzu was thought to be evil by some and a protector by others who wore its amulet, as the demon was said to offer protection from other demons who were Pazuzu's adversaries. Ironically, today, many wear the Labubu doll in much the same way, like a protective icon clipped to their purse or backpack. Will this reemergence lead to a rash of demonic possessions in real life, just as it did in the fictional account when Father Merrin unearthed the demon and Reagan became mysteriously possessed? Apparently, some people are not waiting to find out. The female-focused online platform and brand within the Lad Bible group, Tyla, reports that videos are popping up on social media of people burning the Labubu dolls, and there's a very disturbing reason why. The dolls have been plagued with wild conspiracy theories online and have even been accused of having demonic energy and compared to a demon from ancient Mesopotamian mythology known as Pazuzu. The theory has gone so far that some Christians even begun urging people to get rid of the dolls. And now, in a step further, people are burning them. Pointing out the phenomenon, one user wrote on Reddit, "There is now a Labubu satanic panic on TikTok, and people are burning their Labubus." At St. Michael's, we will wait to see what comes out of this fad and similar trends, such as the emergence of a trend we examined in our previous episode, that of using ChatGPT as a high-tech Ouija board, that could possibly result in an increased demand for exorcisms. Already, we are seeing ministers express concern that the need is great, but there are not enough exorcists. Actually, we have been watching this topic for some time. For example, in 2022, writing in an article that appeared on Insider.com, Joshua Zitzer reported, a survey from a Vatican-approved religious university in Rome found that Catholic exorcists feel overworked and undersupported by bishops, according to the Times of London. Zitzer went on to report this survey was conducted during the 16th annual exorcism course at the Vatican, writing that the lack of support from bishops is a grievance echoed by other surveyed exorcists, the Times said. They complained about receiving little help in exorcising the long lines of Catholics claiming satanic possession. In the past, the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church have demonstrated little interest in developing programs in their jurisdictions to provide the rite of exorcism to those who felt or were in fact possessed. Believe it or not, in the past, Catholic priests have actually reached out to St. Michael's Journal seeking information and learning about the rite of exorcism when their own ordinary was not forthcoming. This, of course, was a surprise to us, as we are not Roman Catholic, just as it was a surprise to us that the contact information necessary for attending the annual course at the Vatican seemed to be classified information, at the time, held very closely by the episcopacy, even though Pope John Paul II in 2004 asked for each diocesan bishop to assign an exorcist. More recently, in a piece titled "We Need Deliverance Teams in Every Diocese," Constance T. Hull wrote these excerpts. Every diocese needs deliverance teams. I don't say this lightly. I say it because I am experiencing issues pertaining to the diabolical with greater and greater frequency and intensity. Our response when faced with the demonic is often disbelief, claiming it's all psychological or terror. The other danger is to ascribe everything to the psychological. It's true that a lot of cases are mental illness, but there is also a disturbing uptick in the number of people who are being diabolically harassed. The people I encounter who are suffering spiritual attacks have been victims of abuse, rape, trafficking, family occult activity, addiction, generational curses, witchcraft, Freemasonry, mediums, psychics, Ouija, etc. Young people are dabbling in the occult at higher levels thanks to social media and the cultural experience. There is often a blending of the psychological and preternatural. Those who are battling demonic forces also have psychological issues. It's not an either-or situation in many cases. There are people I have ministered to whose lives have been in danger due to diabolical attacks that mimicked their mental illnesses. It was clear to everyone involved that both the psychological and preternatural were at work. If we had ignored the signs, some people may well have committed suicide. It's that serious. These words of Constance T. Hull, a wife, mother, college campus minister, teacher, and writer, who also holds a master's in theology, seemingly indicate that she and those of us like her can sense or literally feel the presence of evil. Indeed, those of us who are sensitive to spiritual forces can also relate to the words of Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, who in his Diary of an Exorcist, The City of Saints, contrasting the feeling of holiness some places have, such as Lucia, Italy, which he was visiting at the time, with places that, well, have exactly the opposite effect. He wrote, "Some locations are particularly full of demons, especially if great evil was perpetuated in that place. Thus, when a family complains that their house has demons, we will ask about the history of the place, looking for possible openings to evil. A person with some spiritual sensitivities will be especially aware of an infestation of demons and will likely have a reaction, such as headaches, nausea, or generally feeling sick. As an example, being in a former Nazi concentration camp where countless innocent souls were executed will likely be very difficult for a spiritual sensitive to endure for long. One seldom literally feels the presence of evil in the sense as I described in the story at the beginning of this presentation, in which the demon actually touched people. But many of us do have spiritual sensitivities, as Monsignor Rossetti put it. But such a gut feeling is not a necessary prerequisite when you find tangible evidence. As I have time, I peruse various social media platforms in which people share their experiences with the paranormal, sometimes offering advice or support in the comment sections. Recently, while reviewing one such platform, I found a young person sharing what was to him a very unusual, if not potentially frightening experience. As Ms. Hull wrote, many victims are quick to believe that what they experienced is somehow psychological, as if the event was only a part of their imagination. In some cases, it helps them to give some degree of confirmation, which I did when I shared my own experiences with the phenomena in the comment section of his post. Many years ago, I was in a used bookstore and came across a small paperback with a title that intrigued me. The Exorcist series, Book 1. However, when I got home and looked at the title page, I found that the original title was The Enigma of the Poltergeist. Although this book, published in 1967, was not about exorcism per se, one chapter caught my attention as I have dealt with the phenomena for some time. Raymond Bayless, the author, reported many cases of poltergeist, sometimes thought of as restless spirits, but one chapter in particular stood out, a chapter dealing with stone-throwing spirits. I have owned a real piece of property since 1997, one surrounded on two sides by overgrown public easements and undeveloped private land on the other two sides. All four sides covered by thick undergrowth and now towering trees. I have, from time to time, discovered while mowing the yard, golf ball to baseball sized stones that seem to appear from nowhere. As a trained investigator and skeptic, I always look for a plausible explanation before jumping to a conclusion, but in the case of the unexplained stones, often found by the blade on a lawnmower, I can find no explanation. Obviously, I was intrigued by Mr. Bayless's research, as his work did provide a possible clue as to the source of the stones that often ruin the edge of my lawnmower blades. As I shared with the social media poster, who was bewildered by the sudden appearance of rocks that seemed to come his way from thin air, this is not that unusual of a phenomenon and even has a name. Lithobolia. Although Wikipedia states the word lithobolia comes from a religious festival of ancient Greece, the lithobolia, in which participants threw stones at one another, the word does have a similarity to a name of entities found in the folklore of North American indigenous peoples. Bopoli, which are said to be little people of the Choctaw folklore, known for causing mischief and particularly for throwing rocks at people. The name Bopoli means thrower. Some people believe that Bopoli are the same people as the Kowi Anukasha, another race of Choctaw little people who are typically described as powerful and dangerous rather than mischievous. Although the source in my own experiences might be mischievous, other people report outcomes quite different. As I recall, in his book, Bayless told of one family who, when besieged by stones falling as from the clear blue sky, they felt compelled to call the police. The officers that responded seemed indifferent to their plight, even thinking they were cranks, until the stones started falling on the patrol car, causing substantial damage. Subsequent investigation could not yield any possible perpetrators of the crime. Well, at least not human persons of interest, as law enforcement people are fond of saying. A good search engine will provide one with several instances of such unexplained activity. One such report was reported by Kevin and Jennifer Malik, who wrote, "As for personal experiences with rock throwing, this was one of the reported phenomena at the Summer Wind Ruins in Wisconsin that we have experienced twice firsthand, both on different nights and with multiple witnesses. The first time it happened to us, we were part of a restoration campout when rocks were literally flying out of the foundation every so often. One person was hit by one of the rocks. The second time was during a Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society investigation of Summer Wind during 2014 when two investigators were doing an EVP session in the basement. A rock came flying into the basement out of nowhere and was picked up on audio hitting the cement walls and floor ceiling. The cameras never revealed the source for the rock. Aside for the 2 investigators who were being recorded, the other 3 on location were on the other side of the ruins watching from the nerve center that was set up to monitor the location. We can promise we do not throw rocks at each other. Despite what may be causing the phenomena, rock throwing has been around for a while and will continue to be reported in all environments and in multiple fashions by all walks of life. We can attest that this phenomena is real and does happen. As Mr. Bayless noted in his aforementioned book, there seems to be many cases of rock throwing in Southeast Asia. In December of 2019, Coast to Coast ran the story, Stone-Throwing Poltergeist Plagues Family in Bhutan. Tim Benall reports, the strange haunting reportedly began last month when Bagalal Gali and his grandson, Sunil, were staying in a small hut where they were watching over cattle. In the middle of the night, they noticed that rocks began raining down upon the roof and the commotion continued until morning. The following day, Sunil and his father Sabir returned to the hut and the roof was once again inexplicably pelted with stones. They subsequently fled the scene, but as they departed, they were also struck by the puzzling flying rocks. Something was chasing us, Sabir recalled. It followed us all the way. Over the course of the next few days, the proverbial rainfall of rocks continued night after night wherever the family was staying until they could no longer stand the situation and enlisted a shaman to help them. In 2022, the Huffington Post reported a story by Ed Mazza detailing how that in an upcoming episode, at that time, of Zach Bagans' Ghost Adventures, Bagans and his team had performed an ancient Sumerian rite in a house where years ago a doctor had killed his wife, attempted to kill his children, before finally killing himself. Bagans was quoted as saying, and nobody knows why he went mad and did this, but a lot of people, including myself, speculate that something very dark, something very evil, in that mansion began to affect him. It was during their investigation they captured on video created inside the house a stone miraculously appearing out of thin air and landing near the feet of one of the team members. Anthony Clements Thrower, a reporter for the Mirror UK, wrote of a similar incident in 2023. Here are some excerpts of the article. A ghost hunter investigating one of the UK's most haunted buildings claims to have caught the voice of a troublesome poltergeist on camera. Shortly after their arrival, Matt said they were pelted with stones. When they checked the recorders later on, they were shocked to hear the voice of a man who had not been on the trip. When a woman asked if it was enjoying frightening them, the eerie voice was heard saying, "No." Matt said, "It is probably the best evidence I have ever captured on a ghost hunt." The subject of the interview, Matt, explained that the chambers beneath the building they were investigating were at one time used as dungeons, which, if true, we can assume that there had been traumatic events in the chambers, possibly even violent deaths, which, as Monsignor Rossetti posited, might explain the presence of paranormal activity. In my own situation, the rocks that seem to magically appear might just be the work of the previous owner of this property. I do not know if he died while in the hospital or actually died on the property itself. However, in addition to the rocks, we have from time to time heard someone walking on the deck that surrounds part of the house, and we have an anomaly on videotape. In 1997, after buying the property, while waiting for our new house to be completed, my wife decorated the living room of the existing structure, making it more livable, and asked me to videotape her work. With one of those old cameras that used a full-size VHS tape, I stood with the camera on my shoulder in the center of the living room, and with the camera recording, I remained stationary while turning to my right in a full circle, creating a 360-degree record of the room, its furniture, and decorative accessories. On one wall was a large antique plate glass mirror. When we reviewed the tape later, not only was there a reflection of me with my VHS recorder, but we also saw the reflection, or perhaps more adequately, the image of a man who we do not know, nor was he present that day. It had been just my wife and I alone in the house. I wish I had been able to preserve the recording digitally for posterity, but sadly, by the time I had access to such equipment several years later, the entire recording had deteriorated as old tape is prone to do. Paranormal activity is not unusual nor rare. It happens every day to many of us. The mainstream media tries to reflect the secular scientific position that such events are not but figments of the imagination, and to report such experiences is to cause question of the journalist's objectivity and professionalism. Therefore, many events go unreported. We can laugh at the tabloids and their tendency to publish sensationalism and that which seems absurd, so much so our collective ridicule of such publications then becomes a culture event so common that it even becomes part of the plotline in comedy movies such as Men in Black, as we highlighted at the beginning of this presentation. But in between the nonsensical, they do publish stories of real events frightening real people, stories that the legacy media shies away from far too often. Or when they do publish a fantastical account, they indirectly attack the sanity or credibility of the victim, implying that he or she who suffered by the hand of the unseen is some sort of buffoon, undeserving of the empathy of society. It has always been the mission of St. Michael's Journal to educate people on the sometimes necessity of exorcism and the reality of the paranormal, and to that end, helping people to understand that things that go bump in the night might just be real and not imagination. A mission of educating people so that they can find healing and peace. We hope that if you have found this presentation helpful, maybe you, in turn, can tell others and help them to overcome the terror often encountered in the paranormal. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today and to ask that if you enjoyed our presentation, to please click on the like and subscribe buttons. The cases of paranormal related events described in each episode are intended to raise the audience's awareness of religious and spiritually related topics. St. Michael's Journal is one of the publishing ministries affiliated with the Archdiocese of St. Michael's, an independent liturgical and sacramental church. Finally, until we meet again, may the peace of Christ be with you and yours forever.